Winter Soldier, what's going on? Let me know. Actually, the volume should be working now, correct? Is everybody hearing this? Everybody as in one person? Hopefully this is working. Looks like it is. So I wanted to try this streaming software out and see if it worked. There's some cool music that I can... This is a big deal for me, actually being able to have music in the stream, figuring this out. Crazy. So, Winter Soldier says, all good, basking in the glorious presence of that terrible Game Pass lineup. Yeah, it's really bad, isn't it? And it makes you wonder when these, well, you know what? They just had Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. There's South of Midnight coming. There's Doom, the Dark Ages coming. So there's a lot of stuff coming from first party. This is why I wanted to do this stream, because as somebody who's been around this stuff for a long time, especially Xbox, I kind of fell into the whole, PlayStation is the place to be. PlayStation is where the cool kids are. Sales, sales, sales. And if something sells better than something else, you kind of feel strange supporting the thing or enjoying the thing that doesn't sell more than the other thing. There's like a weird psychological thing that happens. And I fell into it. I really did. And I'm not saying that PlayStation isn't the better system if you're looking for a console. Clearly selling more units gives you or puts you in a position where maybe third parties are more interested in putting their games on your platform first. Maybe it becomes easier to make deals with those third parties for exclusive games for a time period. So all of that stuff is true. I'm not trying to negate any of that. But I wanted to talk about something that happened. And by the way, if anybody is in here and wants to hop in, I will try and send you the link and you can tell me why exclusives are the best thing ever, why Xbox is terrible, or why you like Xbox versus PlayStation. Let me know in the comment section. I'll go on to X and I'll try and send you the link. I know it's early. I know it's a Tuesday, but when you don't have to work, it's nice. So I was around Xbox for a long time. Xbox, the original Xbox, Xbox 360, all this stuff. Back in the day, I did BGST, huge Xbox-related podcast. I was more the Sony, Nintendo person. Really, I was just the person who pushed back on a lot of the everything else sucks except Xbox, because I just don't think that way. But what happened recently is interesting. I got caught up in the PlayStation sells more, therefore I need to be there because everybody else is. Even though there were things that I enjoyed about the Xbox and I kind of forgot about, right? I haven't turned the Xbox on in a while. It was more on PlayStation, playing games there, buying my third-party games there. But I watched the video of the guy, and I don't know his name, and I don't know if he did this because he's grifting or what. I don't know. It doesn't matter because the net result is the same for me. I watched it, and he talked about how he never tried an Xbox, and he always thought Xbox sucked. And he discovered all of these great things that I already knew about. I was around before achievements, and they rolled out achievements, even though I think achievements and trophies are ridiculous. Xbox Live, the controller, the ecosystem. So he discovered all of these things that were, compelling to him as somebody who's always been on PlayStation. But what happened when I watched that is I said to myself, why is it that I'm so down on the Xbox? Why is it that I've decided that some of the stuff that I enjoy, I really don't enjoy because more people are enjoying PlayStation. Therefore, I should be over there primarily all of the time. Another thing happened where over the holidays, I visited some family members, and my 10-year-old nephew is sitting down. He's playing on his PlayStation 5. No idea why he has a PlayStation 5. He just got one. And he's playing Fortnite. And I asked him, are you excited about Intergalactic? Are you excited about, have you played Last of Us Remaster? Have you played Ghost of Tsushima? Have you played Spider-Man? And none of his friends or him knew what the hell I was talking about. They play Fortnite and they play NBA 2K. So I'm like, okay, this is kind of strange. Winter Soldier says, yeah, I saw your video. I was going to comment on it. Xbox is in a weird place. There's a lot of potential for growth for them, but I just worry, hey, it's overly ambitious. So I'm going to get to that, right? They're always a day late and a dollar short, or they're way, way, way ahead of where things are going. And by the time everybody gets there, Microsoft is either late, they miss it like mobile, or somebody else does it better. That's fine. So he's playing on his PlayStation 5. We hop in the car to go get some food because nobody ever brings enough food when it's an Italian household. You got to go out, you got to get extra bread. Somebody forgot wine. So we go out, we get it. He hops in the car. He's on his phone playing Fortnite. The same thing he was playing on PlayStation 5. He's like, it doesn't matter. It's my phone. It's my PlayStation. Then I'm like, Jesus, maybe there's something to this idea that nobody really cares about the platform or the things that I care about. Like, I come from a generation where you buy a box for the exclusive games, right? That's the hook. And I've never really not felt that way, but I'm really, really old. And like I said, the idea, there's a psychological thing when it comes to being with the thing that sells the most. You have to be there. You want to be there. You feel like if you're not there, you're doing something wrong. And when you turn on your Xbox and only 30 million people that purchase it, 30 million is a lot of people. But you go on social media and you feel like you're doing something incorrect. So I decided, after watching that guy's video, talking to my 10-year-old nephew, I said, let me just get back to my Xbox for a while, because a lot of the things that I was doing there, I kind of enjoy, even though maybe it's not the most sold platform. Maybe they're doing stuff that flies in the face of a lot of the conventions that I had growing up when it comes to buying a platform, buying a system. So I went back. I'm using the controller. I like the offset sticks. The DualSense controller is fantastic. The haptic feedback, the adaptive triggers, the speaker, all of that is more engrossing in a video game. Megatron says, good morning, just joined. The new AMD GPUs look great. Megatron, dude, I would never use a PC to play video games. Never. But the price of those GPUs, I am fine being a console peasant. By the way, anybody in this chat, if you want to jump in and tell me why the Xbox is horrible or the PlayStation is better or Xbox's strategy may be good, let me know. I'll throw you a link. You can hop in here. So, I'm using the controller, the Xbox controller. I like the offset sticks. I like the fact that it's a little bit thicker back here because I'm a big guy. I like the fact that my hands, my pinkies are wrapped around this really nice. And I like the offset sticks. The DualSense controller is a much better controller in terms of the features. I cannot deny that. I think in the video, the guy said it's a gimmick. I don't think it's a gimmick. I've played a bunch of games where the DualSense controller has the adaptive triggers implemented. For instance, the new Star Wars Outlaws game has the adaptive triggers implemented in the game. But I don't think it's huge, right? Huge. But, I'm playing that and I'm enjoying it. Devs125, did you block Devil? I have no idea who Devil Shooter is. I have no idea if I blocked somebody. Maybe I blocked them. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. Maybe they said something that was a little bit harsh. I don't know. I'll check. What was I saying? Oh, so I'm playing the game. I'm using the controller. I'm like, oh, I kind of like the offset sticks. I miss this. And then I went back into the dashboard and I went back into some of the things that I had, like the games. Megatron says, me either. I'm assuming that there's the future tech of home consoles. Yeah. I don't know. I think consoles are always going to be around. I think they're going to get more expensive. I'm going to get into that. So I'm going into my games list, and I have almost 2,000 games because I purchased so much digitally. And I have some physical Xbox 360 games, some physical Xbox One games, some physical Xbox, original Xbox games. And a lot of those games, I put the disc in the Series X and they work. So that's a huge selling point for me. I cannot do that. My PlayStation 3 library is gone. I cannot access my PlayStation 3 library unless I want to stream these games. And I don't. I don't want to stream them. So that's a huge selling point for me. Devs125. I'll join link, please. Devs125. I'll check and see if I have you on X really quick. Let me get back to the topic. Are you Devs125? Devs125. Are you you're not Devs125 with 0 followers, are you? Joined July 2023 with no picture on your profile? I don't know. I'm sketchy. So I'm accessing my games. I'm playing my games. I'm enjoying those games. I like going back and playing the original Xbox games. I like going back and having the 360 games. I'm playing, the Mass Effect games from my Xbox 360 discs. I have the Legendary Edition digitally. I have Half-Life, the Orange Box. All of these games just show up, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, well, yeah, the PlayStation is selling more consoles. And yeah, that's a good thing. And yeah, it puts them in a position to probably get more third-party support or probably have more deals with third parties. Winter Soldier, LOL. And all that's great. I'm not denying that. I'm not even here to tell you that PlayStation isn't going to be the most successful console when you compare it to PlayStation and Xbox. It's just, it's obviously going to be PlayStation because they've built up that brand recognition over the years. It's not necessarily the exclusive games. It's the brand power. People just buy it because it's PlayStation. So I'm playing all these games, the Access on Xbox Series X, my offset sticks, and I'm just having a good time. And I'm thinking to myself, why is it that I was influenced this much by sales of something? Why is it that something selling more than something else pulled me in and got me really, really, really excited to just forget about the other thing that I have and not use it? It didn't make much sense to me. So I'm looking around, I'm seeing arguments, people saying, well, subscription services are terrible. I can buy my games. I like buying my games. It's terrible. So I spoke to some people who know nothing about video games. And I said to them, I'm going to present to you a situation. By the way, listen, I'm not trying to sell you on a subscription service. I'm not trying to tell you Xbox is better. I'm not trying to make the case for you to get rid of your PlayStation. Just putting forth a rational, analogy. Let's say you got two friends, Joey and Vinny. Joey and Vinny own a newsstand. Dev125, my main account comments are not going through. I argue games on PC are not exclusive. Yeah, okay. Look, I'm a console gamer, so I don't care if a game is on PC. I just don't care because it never registers to me, right? I get that that's like sacrilege to some people. I just don't care. The original Gears of War on the Xbox 360, that was on PC. To me, it's an Xbox game. I just don't care. I get it. I'm even softening on the idea of games on other consoles, and I'll get to that. I'm not saying you should believe it or you should do it. I'm just saying, me personally, after thinking about this stuff, maybe it's because I'm getting a little bit older, I just really don't care that much. So you got two friends, Joey and Vinny. They both own a newsstand. They both sell magazines. You go to Vinny and you say, wow, I want to look at that magazine. Oh, I want to look at that one. You got a bunch of them. Can I look at them? And he says to you, you know what? Give me $20. And for the next 30 days, you can look at every single one of these magazines. Every single one. And you're looking at them and you're thinking to yourself, wow, I'd really like to buy this one. And Vinny says to you, you know what? Give me 40 extra bucks, and for $60 instead of 70, because all of these magazines are $70. For $60, if you give me the 20, I'll let you have it. I'll give you a deal. I'll give you a break. Then you go to Joey. Joey's got the newsstand, the same magazines, and he says to you, they're $70. And you're like, oh, can I look at that one? $70. I can't just look at it? $70. And you say to yourself, well, I like buying my stuff and I don't like the idea of subscription services. And this is terrible. So here's the $70 for the magazine I was looking at over at Vinny's stand for $20. And by the way, he was going to sell to me for $60. Then you give Joey your $70 and you watch Joey count out $49 and put it off to the side. And you're like, Joey, what the hell are you counting out $49 for? And he's like, well, I got to give it to Vinny because he has this whole thing wrapped up where I only get 30%. And then you go back to Vinny and you're like, man, you really got this down pat. Not sexy. Now, people go to Joey's stand because he's been around a while. People trust Joey. He's got the brand power. But that's a great deal. That's all I'm trying to say. The idea that a subscription service or Game Pass isn't a great deal is ridiculous to me. And the idea that, well, it's a subscription service, so it hurts gaming, I don't understand that either, because you can buy those games. You don't have to. You can subscribe for $20 and you can purchase every single game. You don't have to subscribe. You can purchase them for full price, or you can subscribe and purchase them for a discount while everyone else is paying $70 digitally. Or you can go to Amazon and purchase these games physically. You can still purchase your games. It's the idea that some people have that everything they do is put in a subscription service, and therefore that devalues. Oh my God, I gotta have more coffee. And somehow that devalues gaming in general or the Xbox. Look, here's another way to look at it. The idea that Microsoft had to do a subscription service because no one is buying their games. Think about this one. What if Microsoft had a game that they knew everybody would purchase? What if they had a game that they knew every single person would purchase, but they still put it in a subscription service? Doesn't that tell you that a software and services company is being a software and services company because that's who they are? And they have that game. It's Call of Duty. The Winter Soldier, I agree. In terms of value proposition, there is a huge allure of buying games. By the way, allure is a word that isn't used much, and I appreciate that. There is a huge allure of buying games day one, absolutely, versus just playing them via a subservice, plus having access to all the free-to-play games, absolutely. Here's my thing. I was the guy who decided the PlayStation's selling tons of systems. In my mind, what's that from? In my mind, Nacho Libre. So I come from the generation where that's the way to do things. So for me, it's like, I'm going to PlayStation. I'm going to spend all my time there, even though I have every console. But then at some point, after watching this dude's video, seeing how excited he was for all the things that I already knew about that I just decided weren't, valuable to me or weren't fun, talking to my nephew, I just don't care. I really just don't care. Dev125 says the indirect result of games going to PlayStation does devalue the Xbox. But here's the problem with that, right? The inherent value of an exclusive is that it's an exclusive. Now, if you're a software and services company and you want those games to have the largest tail possible to make the most money while still maintaining an exclusivity feature, that's Game Pass. You might not like that. That might not be sexy. I might not even agree with it. But the idea that you're going to get every single game that everybody else is paying $70 for, by the way, all those people never wanted Xbox games because they're terrible. But now all of a sudden, everybody's lining up to hand $70 to Microsoft. And by the way, devaluing the platform by buying the game on PlayStation, you're affirming their strategy. If you really didn't like it, you wouldn't buy Call of Duty anymore. Why do you think Sony just didn't want Microsoft to purchase them? Because in the past, that $49 would go to Activision. But because of the relationship they had, there would be ancillary benefits like map packs first or something. Now, there's none of that, and that money goes to Microsoft. It's not sexy. It doesn't sell consoles. It's not going to get you traction on social media. But if you're a thinking human being, it definitely makes sense. It definitely makes sense. And it's not sexy. And by the way, when I talk about cost, right now, when I purchased my PlayStation 5, right? For me, it was Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Couldn't get that anywhere else. It was exclusive. But right now in PlayStation Plus, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us 1 Remastered, Spider-Man Miles Morales, all of those games are in PlayStation Plus. So the net result of selling exclusive games to an audience that only wants exclusives because it values their console and they feel like Sony loves them, to then turn around and put them in a subscription service only for those people because PlayStation Plus only exists on PlayStation, who's subscribing? Of course they want to have value in the subscription service. Think about how much money it cost Microsoft and Sony to create a console. They're the ones going out and getting high-end components to make these consoles cutting edge when they release. And they have to be $500 or $600. All of that cost, plus all of the cost to keep the studios open, plus all of the cost for the employees, plus all of the cost to develop the games, plus all of the cost to manufacture and ship, all of that is on Microsoft and Sony. There's a reason why Naughty Dog hasn't released any games this generation, and they're going to release one during the PlayStation 5 generation. And you're going to get the remastered version of Intergalactic probably at the launch of the PlayStation 6, while everything is cross-gen until about 5 years into the PlayStation 6 life cycle. It's because of these costs. And I don't think it's insane that a software and services company figured out a way to offset some of those costs on other platforms. Dev125 says, I think I would have wasted $500 in the box. As the consumer, that's all that matters. But that's not all that matters. That's what matters to you. That's what matters to you. What matters to you isn't the world. Some consumers see value in purchasing a box that they know the exclusive feature of it is going to be the subscription service. They're not going to have to pay $70 for these games, and you're going to have to pay $70 for them. You're going to supplement that strategy. The strategy that you don't like, you're going to affirm by paying $70. I mean, it's obvious. I'm not saying you have to like it or you have to support it. I'm not even saying I agree with it. I'm just saying, as somebody thinking outside the box, I can't sit here and tell you that what they're doing doesn't make sense, especially if they're both going to stay in the market of high-end consoles that cost a ton of money. Why do you think Sony said that you should evaluate a console's success based on the number of monthly active users, not the number of consoles sold? Why do we forget that they said that? We forget that because we're driven by these numbers. And by the way, we're only reacting to one number, consoles sold. What about this number? Think about this. What about spending what Sony Computer Entertainment and Sony in general, computer entertainment, the movie theater, the movie section, everything that they make, all the money they make in a year, Microsoft spent in an afternoon. Why isn't that number something that's driving people to purchase an Xbox? Because you're going to get tons of support when it comes to the subscription service. I'm not saying it's sexy. I'm not saying I even agree with it. I'm just saying it's something that I can absolutely see. Something I can absolutely see. I think it's undeniable. Dev125 says, Microsoft wants 100 million Game Pass subs. That's not going to happen. Nobody gets 100 million subscribers. Maybe, I think Netflix is there, but when you look at the number of people on Earth, I think it's about 4.5 billion. Nobody has 4.5 billion subscribers. There's a finite number for any product that you're selling or any service. By 2027, that's the number it needs to hit, said in Activision Blizzard King's case. Well, that's what they said, right? That's what they said, but I don't know if they're going to hit that. And if they don't, I don't think that they're just going to collapse. Microsoft's a $3 trillion company. They're making tons of money every month with Game Pass. And they're going to make tons of money by putting their games on PlayStation. And the people that don't like subscription services are going to buy Microsoft games. And Microsoft is going to say thank you. The same way that, here's another one. The same way that people say 30% of every Call of Duty sale on PlayStation is going to take that 30% and use it to keep games off of Xbox. Okay, well, what number do you have to add to 30 to get 100? 70. So 70% is going to Microsoft. Can't they use that to do something to bolster their position for their users? Of course they can. The problem I had, I'm not talking about anybody watching, I'm talking about me personally, is I got caught up in the sales thing. I got caught up in the prominence. The PlayStation just sold 4 million consoles. That doesn't necessarily mean that I can't enjoy the Xbox every once in a while. It doesn't necessarily mean that there is an inherent value in a subscription service, because there is. There's nothing I can do about it. I might not agree with it. Like I said, I come from a generation where you purchased a system and you purchased it for the exclusives. I got a Sega Master System for Phantasy Star. I got a Genesis for, God, what was the game I wanted on Genesis that you couldn't get anywhere else? It wasn't Sonic. I'm not a big Sonic fan. But PlayStation, when PlayStation 1 launched, there weren't a lot of exclusives. They went around and they got third-party support. And slowly they built it up. But take a look at Naughty Dog. When you talk about costs, the PlayStation 2 generation, they did Jak 1, Jak 2, Jak 3, Jak X Combat Racing. PlayStation 3 generation, Uncharted 1, Uncharted 2, Uncharted 3, and Last of Us. What have they done this generation so far that's PS5 only? Nothing. Why? Because of all of the cost of doing things. And Sony has to find a way to mitigate that cost, or else they're going to wind up doing the exact same thing. Eventually, you're going to have PlayStation Plus tiers with smaller PlayStation past IPs that are being brought back that'll probably drop in their day and date. And if that happens, then why not? Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart being in PlayStation Plus, extra tier. When I purchased it, I'm like, this is the reason. This is an exclusive. They love me. But now it's in the PlayStation Plus tier. So how long is that love? Why do you need it for 6 months or a year, and then all of a sudden you don't need it? If you want a company that you love to stay around, they have to figure out a way to mitigate these costs. And I'm not upset. I'm not upset that if somebody subscribes to Game Pass and they're going to play Doom, The Dark Ages, South of Midnight, the next Halo, if it's good single player wise. I hate multiplayer. Hopefully the single player leans in on the lure, or the multitude of other games coming from these studios that they purchased. If somebody subscribes for $20 a month to play those, and then eventually says, I like South of Midnight, I'm going to purchase it at a discount. They're still purchasing games. They might not be purchasing them at a larger rate than what PlayStation is, but maybe PlayStation needs to figure out a way to mitigate those costs. And maybe PlayStation Plus is that. Maybe eventually it becomes a place for day and date. You see what I mean? It's not just about who's selling the most. This is like a social media disease. People get caught up in this. I got caught up in it. The way that I know people get caught up in it is because I got caught up in it. I'm not saying that I don't love the PlayStation 5. I'm not saying that I'm not looking forward to some of the exclusives whenever they come out. But that's the rub. I'm waiting a long time for these studios that used to make really great games, 2 or 3 or 4 in a generation. And the reason is because of the cost. They need to wait until the PlayStation 5 sells a certain amount of consoles. There was a study a while ago that said, I think it said, in order for a game to have the opportunity, not a guarantee, but the opportunity to sell a million copies, they had to sell 10 million units. So Sony's waiting for that PlayStation 5 to sell before they can release these big AAA first-party games that don't make money at launch, that have to sell a gazillion copies, that then have to be remastered and remade for the next generation, while those studios leapfrog to the next generation and take 5 or 6 years to make the next IP. I'm not sure that strategy is great going forward. They're not Nintendo. Microsoft and Sony aren't Nintendo. They don't use weather technology. They don't put themselves in a position where at launch these systems are profitable, and they can't feed themselves the way Nintendo does with their IP. That's why Nintendo uses lateral thinking with weather technology approach to their systems, to their products. Microsoft and Sony go high end. So somewhere somebody's got to figure out this cost game. Winter Soldier says, yeah, I feel like gaming is in a weird crossroads. Each platform has their advantages, but they'll have to find their own ways to grow past console. I don't think it's growing past console. I think it's finding a way to mitigate costs. I really do. Devs125 says, I mean, you're right, but that's why I'm looking into PC. I don't care of the reasons. You stop serving me, I'm leaving. That's the extent of me supporting anything. Well, I mean, how does PC serve you, really? None of that stuff's exclusive. It's just there's this psychological thing that happens. I'm telling you, if you stop and you think about it, it's the schoolyard thing where all the cool kids are over here and you're over here, but you like being over here. Your friends are over here, and you also like some of the stuff over there, but because there's more people there, psychologically, you feel like that's the place to be, and you're doing something wrong. It's the same thing when it comes to any product. Winter Soldier says true. So I do feel like, this, and it's always guys, man. Like we are just so dumb. I hate to say it. It's not women behaving like this. When I go on social media, it's 30, 40, 50-year-old men who are like, I'm buying my games. This is terrible. And buy them. But by the way, you could still buy them on Xbox. You could still buy them. You can buy them at a discount if you're subscribed to Game Pass. Why would you say to yourself, I want Indiana Jones, but I'd rather pay $70 for it because I hate the strategy that Microsoft's doing. But at the same time, you're affirming that strategy by buying the game for $70 on PlayStation or buying Call of Duty. It doesn't make sense to me when I think about it in that way. Winter Soldier says, personally speaking, I can't transfer my... This is the good point. Personally speaking, I can't transfer my 2,000 plus library. Exactly. So there's really no reason for me to just upend all my financial investment and move to PC. That's the good point. So you have a library on console that can't go to PC. Maybe Microsoft's working on that. Maybe they're working on it. And maybe if they solve that problem, that'll be another value driver. Not that it's going to offset PlayStation, but maybe it'll be another value driver for people. Dev125 says, no, you're wrong. There's a reason Half-Life Alyx is not on PSVR 2, but my main reason on the PC is to have everything in one place. Well, I mean, Half-Life Alyx isn't on PSVR 2 because of a deal. It can be on PSVR 2. Absolutely it can. And it probably will come to PSVR 2. As far as having everything in one place, I'm not a big PC person because of the idea of stealing games, or I know you guys call it, I don't know what you call it, but I'm not into that. I'm not into, stealing games or emulating them. So that's just a personal thing for me. If you like that, fine. But I would never touch a PC to play video games. It would never happen. I don't care if it was $200, little tower next to my TV. I just wouldn't do it. I don't want to deal with Windows. I don't want to deal with drivers. I know the next answer to that is, oh, well, things are much simpler now. They're really not. I've seen it. It's just not for me. Console is for me. That's another strange thing. It's why would PC people be so upset about PlayStation 5 Pro? It doesn't make any sense. What are you upset about? The great thing, not the great thing, but another thing that's crazy is when I see, this CPU, this GPU, it's going to destroy PlayStation 5 Pro and consoles. It's like $3,500. It's like between the CPU and the GPU, it's like $4,000. Why would I want to do that? I just don't want to do it. If you want to do it, great. Dev, I emulate stuff. Yeah, I steal them and I don't care. Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm just not. I don't want to steal somebody's work. That's just how I am. I know how hard it is to do things and to get paid for them, and I just don't want to steal them. I don't think that's a selling point for a platform. But if other people do, there's a platform for you, right? We have it with. If you don't have access to the internet, we have a problem for you. It's Xbox 360. The worst statement ever. So I kind of got caught up in it. And I said to myself, why am I not playing on my Xbox Series X that much anymore? Like, why am I not enjoying it? Because I am enjoying it. I purchased Star Wars Outlaws, right? And I'm loving the game. I love Star Wars Outlaws, even though I heard terrible things about it. And I'm having a great time with it. Last night, my nephew's on. He's playing Sea of Thieves. I haven't played Sea of Thieves. I played it one time or two times. And he's like, hop on with me. We'll have a good time. Okay. Why is this a bad thing? Should I be upset that it isn't selling as much as PlayStation? I don't know. I just don't understand that. Maybe it's because I do think there is that psychological thing when it comes to social media, when it comes to, getting traction on social media, saying this sucks and this is better. There's always been a slant especially if you're making YouTube videos, you're in the gaming community, to shit on Xbox. And look, Microsoft as a company, I hate. They deserve it. They're one of the worst companies ever. But I think Xbox is doing a lot of things right that PlayStation isn't doing. And I think PlayStation is doing some things right that Xbox isn't doing. What I can't understand for the life of me is people willingly denying themselves enjoyment because of numbers. Microsoft's going to be fine. They're going to find ways to make tons of money. They're going to be a software and services company. I don't think that's a shock. Like I said, if Microsoft games weren't selling and that's why they created Game Pass, what if they had a game that everyone knew, including Microsoft, was going to sell millions upon millions of copies, but they still put it in a subscription service? That's an indication that no matter what happened, even if Xbox was selling the same amount of consoles as PlayStation, I still think Microsoft would end up being a software and a services company because that's who they are. The same way that in order to mitigate some of the cost, you're seeing the entertainment company Sony try and take some of these games and make movies out of them, make anime out of them, to try and monetize even more. It just makes sense. And I don't think it's wrong to find the strengths of an Xbox or the ecosystem and enjoy it. The same way I don't think it's wrong to say to yourself right now that waiting for Intergalactic is exciting as an exclusive title. But I do think eventually, unless Microsoft and Sony get into the weather technology game that Nintendo is, they're gonna have to find a way to combat these costs. Winter Soldier says, I largely agree with you, Worry. My only concern is really how the platform will hold up while Sony and Nintendo still aggressively compete for market share. Listen, I don't want to sound like a dick. Nintendo is not Sony and Microsoft. Whenever I see people putting Nintendo in here, you have to understand what Nintendo is. Nintendo and their relationship to the market and costs is not the same as Microsoft and Sony. Nintendo as a company, years ago, the president of Nintendo years and years ago went and visited Disneyland and spoke to Walt Disney because they wanted to build a brand similar to Disney. And what he told them was, you have to feed yourself. You have to create a tight brand that feeds itself. You cannot rely on other people. And you build it up that way. And you have to make sure that no matter what you do, you stay out of this high-end cost game. So what did Nintendo do? They adopted a strategy called lateral thinking, which means they take technology that's proven, that's been around a while, and that's cheap to acquire, and they do something different with it. So that you, as somebody who says, well, I've played on the PlayStation 4, that CPU, that GPU, it's trash now. And then all of a sudden, they do something with it, and you're like, wow, how did that happen? That's the rub for Nintendo. They don't spend on high-end hardware. The Switch was instantaneously profitable. Take the Wii U. The Wii U is the system that most people think failed because it sold the least amount. The Wii U was profitable on day one. Why? If you purchased a Wii U and one additional piece of software with it, the Wii U was profitable because of the technology that was in the Wii U. It wasn't high-end. Nintendo feeds itself, and they're never going to chase hardware. Sony and Microsoft can't do that. Their audience won't allow it. You're not going to buy a PlayStation 6 if it's a PlayStation 5. Even if Sony says, think about this. I'm trying to get analogies that make this point more clear. Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us 2, Horizon Zero Dawn, Horizon Forbidden West, Spider-Man the first one, all of these games, I don't know why that thumb went up. All of these games were based on PlayStation 4 technology. If Sony could cultivate an audience that isn't concerned with high-end components, if they launched the PlayStation 5 and they only spent the amount of money that it costs to get PlayStation 4 components, they would be instantaneously profitable in day one. And if they use their creators to push out those games, why would it matter that it wasn't as powerful as the Series X? Because those games look amazing, but they didn't cultivate that kind of an audience. The Nintendo audience buys a Switch and doesn't care that there's a mobile processor in it because they know Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Luigi's Mansion 3, Xenoblade Chronicles. They know these games are going to look great for what the system is capable of. But PlayStation and Nintendo, they need high end. They want high end. It doesn't even matter if their games are there. They just want the spec. That's where the costs come in. And they got to find ways to mitigate it. They have to. I don't know how long I've been talking. 44 minutes. So this is Restream. I really don't know how to use it. This is a 720p camera. I think you have to pay for, I guess, to put whatever it is you're used to seeing up on the screen when you watch a podcast. I don't know. Pretty cool that I had 7 people in here. I never expected to get anybody. It's just like my YouTube channel. I had no I had no expectation that I have 100 people subscribe, let alone, I don't even know what it is. I think it's 1,200, which is insane for me. But I don't see the problem with subscription services. I get people don't like them. I get they feel they devalue games. I understand all of that. Winter Soldier says, so I see what you mean as they're in the other category. But for me, when you see user-based numbers between Switch and Xbox, it's significant. But it's really not, because it's a completely different market. It really is. Everyone who purchases a high-end PlayStation is all... Look at it this way. You're buying an Xbox Series X because you want power. You're buying a PlayStation 5 because you want power. Why do you think those same people instantaneously will always buy a Nintendo system, even though they know it's going to be a mobile CPU? Because Nintendo has managed to cultivate an audience, even in people who want cutting edge. They cultivated that childlike audience that's going to buy their toys and play with them, because they give you games. They feed themselves. Sony can't create the number of games in the cadence that Nintendo does. Look at it this way. The Switch costs almost nothing to produce and manufacture and distribute. The cost of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom combined isn't even the cost of Last of Us 2 to develop. And how many copies did those sell? It's a completely different audience. It's a completely different strategy. Yes, they make video games, but it's not advisable to look at Nintendo and say, well, they're beating Microsoft, they're beating PlayStation, so it's over. Because they're not targeting that user in the same way. You want power. Before the PlayStation 5 even came out, we were talking about RDNA or ray tracing or teraflops, right? What were we talking about with Switch? Features. Taking the thing off, getting the controller going on the go. The games. The fun. Nintendo, they were reaping in the benefits of using weathered tech. The cost wasn't there. They were instantly profitable. Winter Soldier says Nintendo is great at cost management 100% because they're a different brand. That's the thing. I was watching, I forget the guy's name. The guy who, the super Xbox guy, like he has a gazillion followers. He has the middle-aged guy. God, what's his name? He's always on with Mooch. Something, Colt Eastwood. So I'm watching him and the guy Mag talk about costs, and I think the Mag guy said, Nintendo is done losing money on hardware. Nintendo's always been done losing money on hardware. People just don't understand how Nintendo does things. They lump them in because they make games, but they don't understand that they're outside of this cost game. They're a brand that feeds itself. If PlayStation didn't have third-party games, who would buy a PlayStation? Pretty much nobody. Nintendo, everybody's going to buy it for Nintendo games. Why are they opening up theme parks dedicated to Nintendo? It's a different brand. It's what Xbox and Sony should emulate to succeed in Mario. See, Winter Soldier, that's the thing. The problem for Microsoft and the problem for Sony is they should do that, but the audience would not accept that. Nobody's going to accept a PlayStation 6 that is PlayStation 5 Pro level power. Even if Sony said, we're going to use our creators to create games that you wouldn't even expect to be able to be played on this system because we're talented and we can do that, people would not accept it because they want power before games. That's why the market that Nintendo has created for itself will always sustain itself. So if you're like a console guy and you love exclusives, like Nintendo's the place to be. Not because they're the same as Sony and Microsoft. They're just a brand that's different. Dev125 said, Nintendo just said recently the most important thing. Well, isn't that the truth? Maybe Luigi's Mansion 3 isn't for you, right? I'm an old guy. I can tell you, I think Luigi's Mansion 3 is one of the best looking games. It's incredible looking, and it's incredible playing. I don't think about mobile processors. Maybe it's because I'm a console peasant. You know what I mean? I just don't think about this stuff. And it's because Nintendo created that environment for its fans and itself to be successful, to feed itself forever. Microsoft and Sony need to figure out this cost game, or else games are going to have to go other places, or else subscription services are going to have to become more attractive, i.e., Sony first-party games dropping into a tier of PlayStation Plus. If Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us 1 Remastered, Spider-Man Miles Morales, if all of those games are there right now, what would be the horrible thing about them being there when they launched? The end result is they're there. That's why when Winter Soldier says Xbox and Sony should emulate to succeed in the current market, they can't. They have to have high end. What they have to do is find ways to mitigate costs. And that's why I think, even if you don't like Xbox, you don't like subscription services, they're finding ways to make sure that they're in a better position with this cost game. And I can't sit here and tell you that it's not something that I can see. Even if you don't like subscription services, and I don't, I still think that that's the rub. That's the right way if you want to stay in this high-end game. Colt Eastwood. I remember that because of the actor Clint Eastwood, but I forgot the name. A zillion followers, crazy. But so yeah, I enjoy the Xbox. I got away from it because of the sales. PlayStation's doing very well, and it's the cool place to be, and everyone's buying it. So what am I doing? Why am I on Xbox? I'm too old. I'm too old for that. I woke up after watching that guy's video and talking to my 10-year-old. I'm not saying I'm not in love with PlayStation. I have one. I love it. But I do like the Xbox. And I have been sort of putting it off because of some ridiculous reasons. Devs125 says, no, Sony won't do that. They tested it with Forbidden a year later and lost money. Forbidden, what do you mean tested it with Forbidden? You mean putting it in the subscription service or yeah, I'm not sure what you mean. Winter Soldier says, yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing you're saying. Sony really should try to make Uncharted 5, but aiming towards the budget Uncharted 4 had. Ghost of Utah seems like it's going for that. I don't know what the budget is. I'm assuming the budget for most Sony first-party games is very, very, very high because it takes a very long time for these games to drop. It's why Sony said recently that they're going to look back in on their older IPs to maybe get more of a cadence of first-party games releasing, because there isn't really that many first-party games releasing. It's mostly PS4 games that have been up-resed for PS5. Conversely, you look at what Microsoft's going to be able to do with Indiana Jones just dropped. You have Doom coming, you have South of Midnight. So they're going to have all of this content dropping, albeit in a subscription service, and you can still purchase it at a discount, or you can say, fuck it, I'm going to go on Amazon, order the disc. You can still do all of that. Devs125 says, yeah, putting it PlayStation Plus extra a year later. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? The audience will not accept Sony trying to find ways to cut costs, which is insane to me. If you love a brand, then just support them staying around. If they need to do something to keep giving you these huge AAA games, let them do it. If Horizon, if Intergalactic dropped in a tier of PlayStation Plus extra, why would that be a bad thing? Why would it be a bad thing? If you love PlayStation and they're saying to you, this costs a lot of money, man. We can't make this money up because the PlayStation 5 generation is almost over by the time it comes out. Maybe you have another 2 years, 3 years. We got to sell at least 20 million copies to break even. Let's say they got to sell 20 million copies to break even. Then inevitably, when you buy your PlayStation 6, why is it exciting to play Intergalactic in 8K? Wouldn't you want them to be able to produce more great quality games? Wouldn't you want them to take the kind of risks that they used to take? Wouldn't you take a look at Astrobot? Astrobot probably didn't cost tons of money to create, and it was successful for them. That's the type of Sony that you should want. That's the type of Sony that needs to exist, because this push for nothing but high end, and by the way, I don't want to pay anything other than $70 for it. It's just not going to last. Look at Rockstar with the next Grand Theft Auto. The rumor of it being $100 at launch. That game almost, it's impossible for it to be $70 and have them make any money. That's why the last Grand Theft Auto is still selling like 37 years later. So I think what Xbox is doing is what Xbox would have done irregardless of where they are in the hardware race. I think there are benefits to it. I think anybody that says there are no benefits to it, or subscription services are devaluing me and I don't feel special, it's a psychological disorder. I don't mean that in a mean way, because I suffer from it. I'm like, no, I want exclusives. I want them to be only here. I'm special. But at the end of the day, I really don't care, right? As long as the company is still creative and making these games that I expect to be great, put them in their subscription service. Let somebody who doesn't have the money to go out and spend $70 on Intergalactic subscribe. And by the way, maybe their subscription, maybe they'll stay subscribed for the PlayStation 2 games that drop in there. The Sly trilogy is there now. Great games. Maybe they'll stay subscribed. Maybe that money will help Sony create the next Intergalactic. Maybe they won't have to scale down as much. These are just things to think about. Devs125 says, saying if you love a brand ironically shows a big problem with gamers. We shouldn't love, well, it's human nature to love brands. Everybody does it, even you. Everyone loves a brand. Everybody. We all do it. We all have our favorite sports team, and the sports team goes out and spends how much money to get the exclusive player on the team. Why do they do that? They want to put asses in the seats to make money, and they want to position themselves to win a championship. Everybody does it. So the strength of brands isn't a problem. It's how is the brand going to stay around for you if you like the brand? Everything changes. And I really think that exclusives will go away unless people just accept the fact that you're going to be able to buy your games, or you're going to be able to subscribe to a service and play them on PlayStation and on Xbox, obviously, because you can do that now. Take a look at what Nintendo does. Again, trying to shoehorn Nintendo in here doesn't make sense. Nintendo has a subscription service that leans on the past, their past IP. I'm talking years and years and years ago. That makes a lot of sense, monetizing those games, because they can, because they're not in the cost game. Sony and Microsoft either have to get out of that cost game, which they can't, because again, nobody will buy a PlayStation 6 that isn't more powerful than the PlayStation 5, even on paper, even if that power is never fully realized. So at the end of the day, I do think there's nothing wrong with what Microsoft's doing. I'm not upset that games are going to go to PlayStation. The Realist One says exclusives are done except for Nintendo. We were talking about Nintendo. Nintendo's idea of exclusives isn't the same as Microsoft's and Sony. They're a completely different brand. They feed themselves. It's completely different. Costs are different. Devs125 says, well, I guess my brand of PlayStation died with the PS4. I don't know why. I mean, I don't know why the PlayStation, if you like PlayStation 4, why wouldn't you like PlayStation 5? I think, honestly, and I don't mean to be mean or anything like that, I think you're stuck in this idea that they should value you in some way. The only thing that you should be doing is enjoying what they're giving you. If you enjoy what they gave you during the PlayStation 4 generation, then there's no reason not to enjoy what they're giving you during the PlayStation 5 generation. It's just this, it has to be this way because it was this way in the past. Or it has to be this way because this is selling more than this. I really softened on it. I really have. Trust me, I was the guy, man. I was there. I was Xbox, playing it all the time. PlayStation 4, PlayStation 2 was my shit. PlayStation 3 came out, and I'm like, Xbox 360 is fantastic. I couldn't believe that the Xbox 360 pulled me away from the PlayStation brand. But I still had my PlayStation 3. Uncharted dropped. It was fantastic. PlayStation 4 came out. Obviously, we know what happened with the Xbox One. The first couple years, the first year, they had better games. I love the Xbox One. And then all of a sudden, TV, entertainment, why? Cost, money, monetization. And now here we are with PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, and they're both doing things pretty similar. And I don't think there's any reason why you shouldn't enjoy what they're doing. The Realist One says, Nintendo games sell. They always put their games first. The others prioritize third parties. Yeah, well, Realist One, we went through this a long, long time ago. Nintendo decided to follow a strategy called lateral thinking with weather technology. Weather technology is old tech that is cheap to acquire, manufacture, and distribute so that their systems are profitable on day one, and they feed themselves with their IP. They built a brand that, in the truest sense of the word, is a brand around the world. They're like Disney. Microsoft and Sony can't do that because they're stuck in this price game. You want, I don't mean you, I mean consumers. Consumers want the highest of the high end at launch with these boxes, and they're going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. They're going to make no money at launch, and they have to find ways to mitigate those costs. Subscription services, games on PC day and date, which Sony is absolutely going to do. And I think Sony is going to put games day and date, live service games, probably day and date in the subscription service, probably live service games day and date on other platforms. And eventually those first party games will be day and date in subscription services. It's just going to happen. And it doesn't mean PlayStation doesn't care about you, because they never did. They never did. If you want your brand and the type of games that they make to continue, let them do what they need to do to mitigate the costs, because they're both in a high cost game, and they're not willing to create hardware that is less powerful in order to put themselves in a really strong position. They're not willing to do that because consumers for those brands, PlayStation and Xbox, aren't willing to accept that. So let them do what they need to do. Not a big deal. It's not a big deal. I'm having a great time with my Xbox. I don't have any problems with it. I'm not upset that it isn't selling more than the PlayStation. I just don't see it. I'm not upset by it. I don't need to be with the cool kids. I don't need to have the best selling thing in order to feel like I'm doing something correct. Is it great, the PlayStation selling a lot? Absolutely. Console gaming, I love it. I want it to be successful. But it doesn't devalue me in any way. The same way when I played Gears of War, again, I'm going to use this analogy. Gears of War on the Xbox 360 was on PC. I think the same day it came out on the Xbox, maybe a few months later. I didn't know that. None of my friends knew that. And if we did, we wouldn't care. We wouldn't care at all because it was an Xbox 360 game. The realist one says Sony has to put service games everywhere. Their fans don't care about their first-party games as a service game. Well, I think they like Helldivers too a lot. Obviously, that game would do incredible if it was everywhere. I think Sony knows that, but they're balancing this boutique status with the high cost and mitigating those costs. Realist one again says, The Last of Us might have made it being exclusive. Well, The Last of Us, well, it's console exclusive. Yeah, I mean, it's still on the console as an exclusive. I think it's on PC, right? Yeah, and it's also in the remastered of the first one is in the subscription service, but the second one isn't there, which is insane. Again, a lot is going to change if Microsoft is staying in the high-end game, but they figured out a lot of ways to make a lot of money to mitigate those costs. Sony hasn't done that yet. They're doing it with movies and anime. They're trying to do it with older games, maybe bringing them forward, maybe having less of a long tail for releasing these games, spending less on them. Maybe that'll help. Winter Soldier says, I'm in a similar kind of dilemma with the exclusivity thing. I still think they're very important holistically, but I really hope Xbox plans pan out because I still prefer playing on Xbox. Winter Soldier, Xbox isn't going anywhere. I mean, look at Surface. I mean, who's buying Surface and they're still making them? They have $3 trillion. They're not going anywhere. They wouldn't spend, listen, all of the acquisitions that Microsoft made, I'm talking about Activision, Blizzard, King, everything else that they purchased was almost equal to the amount that Sony makes in a year. Do you really think that they're going anywhere? And look at it this way. Enjoy your Xbox. It's here now, and you like it. Use it. It doesn't make any sense to be upset because someone else is selling better. The realist one says they only sold 4 million of Helldivers. That's not good with the install base. We got to be careful with the whole install base and the one-to-one sales thing. No systems sell. Like if you have a system that has 100 million systems sold, you're not going to sell 100 million copies of software. We talked about this earlier. There was a study a long time ago. I forget when it was, but essentially they said that in order for a game to have the opportunity to sell to 1 million customers, you have to sell at least 10 million units of the system first. This is why Sony's waiting, giving Naughty Dog a lot of time with Intergalactic, because they want to have as many PlayStation 5s on the shelf as possible so that they have the largest amount of people to purchase that one-off huge cost AAA game without putting it in the subscription service. Des125 says, Sony is taking a gamble not having exclusives, and Sony knows it. That's why they spent the entire PlayStation 5 gen easing PlayStation fans to accept it. Again, I think that the console gamers on PlayStation 5, there's people who are upset, I guess, that these games are on PC. But I don't think that console gamers are going to PC in large numbers. I don't. Every generation you hear that, and it's just not happening. People buy PlayStations for the PlayStation games. They're only on console. If they're on PC, a lot of people just don't care. I think that idea is given a lot more weight because of social media than reality. That's still a poor attach rate on a console exclusives ongoing game. It's really not. It depends on, you can't look at an attach rate. You can't look and say there's 10 million consoles sold and they only sold 1 million copies of a game. You have to know what the cost of developing the game was first. If the cost of developing a game was, I'm just using arbitrary numbers, $100, then selling 1 million copies at $70, they're fine. Look at the Switch. Again, I don't want to use Nintendo as an example here. But you know, if the development cost of a game is $200 million, and you've got a base of 75 million consumers, and they sell 10 million copies at $70 a pop, that's fine. Nobody sells one-to-one. Just doesn't happen. The kids do want PCs now, though. Listen, there has never been more distraction from consoles. There's never been more ways to play other than a console than now. And consoles are still selling. They're always going to sell. Always. There's a market for that nice little device you stick under the TV, you hit the button, you turn it on. It's just always going to be a thing. It doesn't mean PlayStation is going away or PC isn't great or anything like that. You're talking about profit. I'm talking about the service game thriving. Well, service is all about number of players, which is why I said they're going to have to put these games, these service-based games like Helldivers, on other platforms if they want to make money. And I still think they're going to have to put huge AAA budgeted games on other platforms, like the PC Day and Date, which doesn't really affect PlayStation 5 owners, even though on social media you'll see it. Oh, it's not exclusive anymore. Nobody really cares. What they care about is when these games go to other consoles. They see that as damaging. And I see it as mitigating costs in order to keep yourself going. It's not sexy at all. It doesn't get the hits, doesn't get the views. It isn't. I'm with the cool kids. We got exclusives. But if you love your brand, you have to let them do what they have to want to do in order to mitigate cost. Winter Soldier says, hopefully Xbox tries to remedy their constant issues with various third-party skipping. It does harm them to miss out on games when placing. Yeah, that's a big thing. Absolutely. I think a lot of the third parties skip Xbox because of deals and relationships. Not that Sony is evil, but they have a history with certain developers. But yeah, that's a problem. Again, doesn't mean you shouldn't enjoy your Xbox. Dev125, I think PCs will grow in popularity in years to come while consoles decline. I don't think so. I think PCs will be fine, and I think consoles will be fine. I think PC gamers are going to buy consoles too. I just don't think it's ever going to go away because there's a market for it. And by the way, if you're a console gamer, all this discussion around cost and feeding yourself, Nintendo is never going anywhere. So PlayStation and Xbox could go away forever, and everybody's buying high-end PCs. I'm still going to curl up with a toy made by Nintendo. So not a big deal. If you're a PC guy, you don't have to be upset that consoles are around or the PlayStation 5 Pro exists. It's not a threat to like a $4,000 rig. It's okay. It's going to be all right. Promise. Coming up on an hour and 11 minutes. I think I'm going to end the stream soon. I'm appreciative that 7 people showed up. I think maybe if I did these a little bit more, maybe had some people pop in, some guests, it would be fun. I'm just tired of trying to find ways to not be happy when I'm using essentially toys. We're talking about toys, guys. We're talking about grown men playing with toys. That's all it is. It's not that big a deal. It's not that big a deal. Winter Soldier says, by the way, your setup is working really well. Where I think you're set with this format. Yeah, this is Restream, and it's free, which means I can't really put much in the way of videos up or anything like that. You have to pay for that. But I really don't know how to do this. I haven't really done this. I don't podcast a lot because I feel like I can't really add to a podcast. Podcasts are set up in a way that everybody sort of agrees with something. And there might be 1 or 2 people that kind of push back a little bit. But in the end, it's always like, yeah, but, every podcast you listen to, it's like, I like this, yeah, but. Realist One says, you just popped up in the algorithm. Cool show. Realist One, you know what's crazy? I have no idea what that means. I know what an algorithm is. I have no idea how this algorithm works or how people pop up. I just don't know. I would love, though, to be able to talk to people in a more non-threatening way when it comes to this stuff, because I'm really not interested in stealing joy from anybody. There's nothing wrong with the Xbox. There's nothing wrong with playing on the Xbox, with buying your games on the Xbox, with subscribing to Game Pass. There's nothing wrong with it. And there's nothing wrong with what PlayStation is doing. Differences are important. Cheering on your favorite brand or a brand to go away and leave you in a situation where you have one option isn't really a great thing. You might not like what Microsoft's doing. I don't like Microsoft as a company at all, but I like the Xbox. And I stayed away from it for a while because of the whole, I come from a generation where things that sell more are better. And I have a great time with my PlayStation 5. I'm not saying I don't. But there's a lot of stuff on Xbox, like the access to my old games, that I think PlayStation can learn a lot from. And I'm having a great time with it. So that'll be it. Hour and 13 minutes. I appreciate Realist One, Winter Soldier, Devs125 for popping in here. I don't think I missed anybody. We're only 7 people. But yeah, enjoy your Xbox, enjoy your PlayStation. I don't think Game Pass is terrible. I don't think games in a subscription service are terrible. I don't think getting a discount to purchase games through a subscription service is terrible. I do think it's strange to stomp your feet and say, I want to spend $70 for my games. Okay. I think it's a little strange, especially as somebody who's older. But to each their own. So that's going to be it. Thanks for stopping by. I'll try and figure out when I can do these. I could pretty much do them whenever. So I'll try and do them maybe on Tuesdays like now, maybe later on when more people can tune in. But thank you. Appreciate it. And I will see you all. I just lost my train of thought. Jesus. I need some ginkgo biloba. I'll see you all in the next stream.